Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for CBN News Watch. I'm George Thomas. Today, is Vladimir Putin now in a weakened position after a mercenary army just over 100 miles from Moscow? Vladimir Putin cutting a deal to stop the advance and turn them around. Putin cutting a deal to stop a potential rebellion and possibly a civil war, but the U.S. says it's not over yet.
It's still a moving picture, and I doubt we've seen the last act. But I think we can say this much. First, we've seen some very serious cracks emerge.
Republican presidential candidates speaking to the Faith and Freedom Coalition this weekend as evangelicals remain one of the top groups of voters in the country.
I mean, it's bigger than the African-American vote, the Hispanic vote, and the Union vote combined. And that's why all these candidates are here.
1 year after the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, abortion remains a major political issue. And we'll look at the impact of the High Court's ruling.
There's no way to really know at this point, but the best guess that we have is about 200,000 children were born this year that would not have been born.
Hospitals are where you go to get well, but they also can be a place where people can get dangerous infections.
3 members of my family were impacted with hospital-associated infections in 3 different hospitals, in 3 different states, in 10 months' time, culminating with the death of our son, Josh.
We'll look at why people get infected and how you can protect yourself. And a new film tells the very difficult life story of Phil Robertson, the patriarch of the Duck Dynasty clan. Those stories and much more today on CBN News Watch.
This is CBN News Watch.
Folks, a lot to cover this morning, but we begin with the chaos in Russia, which came to the brink of civil war this weekend. With a mercenary army just over 100 miles from Moscow, Vladimir Putin cut a deal to stop the advance and turn them around. Now the Russian government is trying to project that image that all is fine in Moscow, but many experts say the crisis shows support for Putin's war and his regime is crumbling. Dale Hurd has our top story.
In a video released by the Russian government, Defense Minister Shoigu is said to be inspecting troops in Ukraine. Shoigu was one of the leaders Yevgeny Prigozhin's mercenary army was coming after for alleged corruption and incompetence in running the war in Ukraine. But the biggest victim of the uprising has been Vladimir Putin himself. 36 hours of turmoil in Russia may have changed a lot of things. They have certainly left Vladimir Putin looking humiliated and vulnerable.
We've seen some very serious cracks emerge. 16 months ago, Putin was on the doorstep of Kyiv in Ukraine, looking to take the city in a matter of days, erase the country from the map. Now, he's had to defend Moscow.
Friday, Prigozhin, a longtime Putin ally whose Wagner private army has been fighting alongside Russia in Ukraine, announced a march for justice, effectively an uprising against Russian military leaders. Wagner forces seized control of 2 Russian military hubs in the south Friday, and Russian media reported the downing of several helicopters and a military plane. In Rostov-on-Don, Russians were seen cheering and applauding as Prigozhin and his convoy headed to Moscow. But they never made it, turning back just 120 miles from the capital. Russia now says it's dropping its charges of mutiny against Prigozhin. But the damage against Vladimir Putin's image as a leader who cannot be challenged is by most accounts immense. Perhaps just as importantly, Prigozhin has lifted the veil on Russian state propaganda on the war in Ukraine, telling the Russian people they've been lied to.
Putin himself went on national TV to respond to Prigozhin, and Prigozhin said that your government has lied to you. This is not a war that NATO started. There are no Nazis in Ukraine. Taking down the very premise makes it much more difficult for Putin to continue to turn to the Russian people and say we should continue to send people to die in this war for which Prigozhin himself has said to the Russian people, the premise is a lie.
Russian-British commentator Vlad Vexler says the crisis now allows Russians for the first time to consider a future without Vladimir Putin.
Now it's a little more possible for Russians and say, what if we don't go down to the bottom of the inferno with Mr. Putin? What if there is an alternative?
The White House says it will continue to support Ukraine in its defense against Russia. President Zelensky is asking for more weapons and shared concerns that Russia may be planning to blow up the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thank you, Dale. Here at home, President Biden is facing growing questions over the involvement of his son, Hunter Biden, with a Chinese business associate. The president has denied any involvement with his son's business dealings, but IRS whistleblower Gary Shapley relayed that a 2017 WhatsApp message from Hunter Biden to Henry Zhao had been retrieved, which many say indicates that Hunter was using his father's name for influence. According to Shapley, the message said, quote, "I am sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment has not been fulfilled. And Xi, if I get a call for or text from anyone involved in this other than you, Zhang, or the chairman, I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following my direction." Well, that led to multiple questions, as you can imagine, from the media at the White House Friday, which the administration didn't have answers for.
These documents, their authenticity nowhere challenged. That included a July 2017 WhatsApp message sent by Hunter Biden to Henry Zhao, a Chinese Communist Party official. Does this not undermine the president's claim during the 2020 campaign that he never once discussed his son's overseas business dealings with him?
No, and I'm not going to comment further on this. We're good. I'm not. James, let me save you some. Let me save you some breath. If you're going to ask about this, I am not addressing. I know you do more than I'd like you to have. I am not going to address this issue from this podium. I'm just not going to do it.
All right.
I'm not going to do it.
Where was the president on the
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
Well, the problem doesn't appear to be going away and could affect the president's campaign in next year's election. Also on the political scene, Republican presidential candidates descended on the annual Road to Majority conference in our nation's capital over the weekend. Their gathering brings together evangelical voters from around the country. While all the candidates were generally well received, there was no match for the crowd in energy and enthusiasm when the current front-runner, former President Donald Trump, took the stage. Our CBN News White House correspondent Abigail Robertson brings us more.
This year's conference is a must-stop for 2024 GOP presidential primary hopefuls, as each hopes to win the coveted support of evangelical voters.
And thank God Almighty for the Dobbs decision.
The 2024 contenders highlighted their pro-life, pro-family policies.
Every Republican candidate for president should support a ban on abortion before 15 weeks as a minimum nationwide standard.
And touched on two hot-button issues, education and gender identity.
The left is lighting the fire of a cultural revolution all across this land. We are told that we must accept that men can get pregnant.
While most candidates spoke Friday, former President Donald Trump had the primetime Saturday slot.
Were your other candidates treated this way? I don't think so. Actually, I saw one who was booed off the stage.
Many attendees told CBN News Trump is their top choice.
I'm still a forever Trumper, and I love everything that he's done for the country.
Kind of leaning towards him still, but we'll see what the future decides.
Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie was the only candidate to criticize Trump by name, calling him a failed leader, unwilling to take responsibility for his mistakes.
You can boo all you want, but here's the thing. Our faith teaches us that people have to take responsibility for what they do. People have to stand up and take accountability for what they do.
Every announced 2024 GOP candidate spoke at the conference.
There's no path to the Republican nomination for president that doesn't go through the evangelical community.
Faith and Freedom Coalition founder and chairman Ralph Reed tells CBN News the evangelical constituency is the largest and most dynamic of American voters.
I mean, it's bigger than the African American vote, the Hispanic vote, and the union vote combined. And that's why all these candidates are here.
While Reed doesn't plan to endorse in the primary, he's seeing strong support for Trump from conservative evangelicals. Regardless of the outcome, he believes they will enthusiastically rally behind the eventual nominee.
I think the faith community is going to step up in a big way in 2024 and turn out like never before.
While candidates will address many of the same crowds over the coming weeks, they won't face each other until the first debate August 23rd. The big question is how many will make it to that stage. Reporting from Washington, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Thank you, Abigail. As you just heard, abortion is likely to be a major issue in next year's elections. It's been a year now since the Supreme Court overturned the decision which legalized abortion in America. We'll take a look at where it stands in the states and with lawmakers and what the future holds. We'll have that story in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back, folks. Saturday marked the first anniversary of the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe versus Wade, the decision placing abortion law in the hands of lawmakers and courts. Mark Martin looks at where things stand with abortion in the U.S. 1 year later.
Since the Supreme Court's landmark ruling in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, statistics show 25 million women of childbearing age now live in states where the law makes it tougher to get abortions. Most are led by Republicans, with 14 banning abortion in most cases at any time during pregnancy.
There's no way to really know at this point, but the best guess that we have is about 200,000 children were born this year that would not have been born. That's 200,000 kids. That's 200,000 smiling faces on playgrounds. That's 200,000 silly songs starting in kindergarten. That's 200,000 families.
Meanwhile, 20 states controlled by Democrats have secured access to the procedure.
The consequences of the court's decision have been severe. 1 in 3 women have lost abortion access. 17 million individuals can no longer access the full range of reproductive care.
A new USA Today Suffolk University poll shows 1 in 4 Americans say states imposing strict limits on abortion since the end of Roe v. Wade have made them more supportive of abortion rights. And a Marist national poll shows 2 in 3 Americans saying abortion should only be allowed at most within the first 3 months of pregnancy.
At the 3 abortion mills in this city of Charlotte, we've had 176 moms that have changed their mind. They get on this great big mobile sonogram unit. We get them sonograms, whatever they need. We get them church families that will take them in.
I go up, I can say, hey, I'm Miss Tina, I'm a volunteer here. Here are the things that you have to, here are the things to expect. And they're usually very thankful, you know, and I always tell them, if you need anything, I'm sitting right here on the corner.
Melanie Israel, a policy analyst at the Heritage Foundation, weighed in on the abortion issue 1 year after Dobbs.
I think we just need to take a step back and remember that this is a cause for celebration. There are thousands and thousands of human beings who are alive today because of the Dobbs decision.
Mark Martin, CBN News.
Still ahead, 3 different families in 3 different states, all 3 dead in 10 months' time from infections they contracted while in the hospital. And they're not alone. See why 1 out of every 31 patients gets a hospital infection, and learn how you can protect yourself and your loved ones right after this. You know, going to the hospital can be an uneasy experience. Many patients and family worry about the illness or test they're facing, and there's the possibility of getting an infection during their stay. Medical reporter Laurie Johnson looks at the more common hospital infections and how healthcare workers, patients, and their families can possibly minimize the risk.
Armando Nahum knows what it's like for family members to become statistics after being infected in the hospital while being treated for a different reason. Sadly, he's probably seen it more than most.
3 members of my family were impacted with hospital-associated infections in 3 different hospitals, in 3 different states, in 10 months' time, culminating with the death of our son, Josh.
It began when Armando's father came down with pneumonia while being hospitalized for bypass surgery. Then, during a stay for a different surgery, his wife Victoria developed a staph infection. While they both survived, Armando says his 27-year-old son did not survive a sepsis infection contracted after being admitted and treated for skydiving injuries.
You always have a broken heart when you lose a child, but it doesn't matter how old the child is.
Armando's family isn't alone. On any given day, 1 out of every 31 patients has a healthcare-associated infection, leading to about 90,000 deaths per year. Bacterial infections make up the vast majority, which develop when bacteria enter the body through a surgical incision or due to a contaminated medical device like a catheter, central IV line, or ventilator. In addition to the damage to the patient, these illnesses cost the healthcare system billions.
If a patient acquires an infection while in the hospital, then it's the hospital that pays that, the insurance company, and Medicare will not.
Hospitals like Virginia's Sentara Obici constantly look to reduce the risk. For example, after disinfecting rooms, advanced technology helps ensure they got rid of the bacteria by swabbing the area just cleaned, then inserting the swab into this reader that analyzes the surface.
Anything less than 250 is a pass. Anything over 250 is a fail. My team will come back and re-clean the surface if it failed.
Another disinfection practice involves bathing the room with ultraviolet C light, which studies show can reduce the transmission of 4 superbugs, MRSA, C. diff, Staph aureus, and Acinetobacter by 1/3. Believe it or not, some hospitals now use copper to help fight infections on hard surfaces like this copper-infused overbed table, and even in linens like these bed sheets that have copper woven into them.
Copper just has natural antibacterial properties to it, so it helps kill any bacteria on site.
Opportunities to detect infections.
Healthcare workers understand the sooner a device is removed, the lower the risk of infection. So they evaluate each patient to determine whether that can be the day their device can be safely taken out. They also closely watch patients for symptoms of an infection, like fever or diarrhea, and whether they need testing. While hospitals and other healthcare settings are taking steps to minimize the risk of infection, there's actually a lot patients and their families can do too, both ahead of time and during the stay. The healthier a patient is before entering the hospital, the lower their risk. Experts say a big part of overall good health involves a robust gut microbiome. That means having good bacteria in the body, which can often fight off the bad bugs encountered at the hospital, especially those resistant to antibiotics like C. diff. Patients are advised to ask their doctor whether antibiotics are truly needed because these drugs tend to kill all bacteria, including the good.
C. diff is in all of us naturally, and if they're taking antibiotics that are not needed, it's going to kill the flora that's in your stomach that helps prevent C. diff from kind of going crazy.
Armando's experience with hospital infections motivates him to help others.
Ask a lot of questions. Don't be afraid to ask a question, and certainly don't be afraid to ask the healthcare workers to wash their hands. It is the most important single component in the delivery of care: hand hygiene, hand sanitizing.
Yes, clean hands. As simple as it sounds, it can also prevent visitors from spreading disease.
We touch our face so many times, we don't know what surfaces we've touched.
Some hospitals have lower infection rates than others, so do your research, and if you have a choice, talk to your doctor about which facility is best for you, or consult Hospital Compare on the Medicare website. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Coming up, a new film tells the difficult story of the life of the head of Duck Dynasty family. Phil Robertson will bring you a look at The Blind when we come back. Stay with us.
Your news channel. Your shows. The stories you care about. Anytime you want. Anywhere you want. Download the CBN News app today.
The story of the patriarch of the Duck Dynasty clan is coming to the big screen. Phil Robertson thanked the Lord in a recent Facebook post and unveiled the trailer for the new film, The Blind. It's a biographical look at his difficult real-life journey, which included problems with the drink, alcohol. Here's a look at the teaser for the movie.
I, Phil Robertson,
I, Kay Caraway,
promise to love
and be with you forever.
You can do just about anything you set your mind to, Phil Robertson. But it's the drink. He becomes the devil's side. We're fine. I don't think we are, Phil.
Get out. I'm gonna make this work. I want it to work.
I don't know what to say, Master Smith.
You got to die, and then you need to be born again.
In his Facebook post, Robertson wrote, "I'm thankful every day that Jesus changed my life and Miss Kay stuck by me through bad times and worse." And Robertson's son, Willie, wrote, "This movie shows both the good and the bad of our family's origins, but most importantly, it shows God's grace and forgiveness." You can find out more about The Blind, including how to sign up for email updates on cbnnews.com. Folks, that is it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can find more of our awesome news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We hope you'll join us again next time. Have a great day, everyone. God bless.